Hey guys, so I hope that you have enjoyed my rendition of Vlogmas this year. I really enjoyed sharing with you guys. I really enjoyed the interaction and I had a lot of fun with it. I think taking the weekends off was a good idea because it kept things fresh for me. And so this is my last official Vlogmas video. And my last video for just a short bit of time. I'm actually gonna take a little break. I've not done that on purpose on YouTube before. I've taken breaks accidentally when I've gotten sick and things like that, but I've never taken just a little creative break. So I'm gonna take until I think January 11th is when I'm coming back with my mid-year homeschool check-in. So for the next week or so, catch me on Instagram. I won't be here on YouTube. But I just wanted to say thank you because I had such a good time doing Vlogmas, and I really enjoyed all of the encouragement and the positive feedback from all of you guys. So today I'm going to do my January goals video, but it's going to be a little different. Generally, I do a few different goals: a parenting, a family goal, a homeschool goal, a personal goal. But January has always just been a time of like refreshing and renewal for me. And I usually take the month of January just to find our family rhythm, find a new normal now that the holiday hustle and bustle is over, to rest, to refresh, and to just kind of reset our home and our schedule. And so that's kind of where my focus is going to be in January anyway. So I don't want to add any additional goals on top of that. But that being said, starting to reorganize and things like that will bring about a few more goals, I'm sure, for February and March that I maybe wasn't aware of before. So, so basically my goal for January is to just reset, refresh. I'm sure it is for many of you. I'm not quite a resolution type of person. I'm just a refresher type of person. So you guys will have to let me know if you set resolutions. That being said, one thing that I do want to do before I end a year is to focus and look back on the things that defined that year, the good and the bad. I think it's a good thing to kind of acknowledge the bad as well, just because it helps you process it, acknowledge it, be aware that it was real, whether these bad things and good things that happened in your 2018 were things that you wanted to be part of your story or not. They are. And so I think to kind of bundle them up and make amends with those things before we move on to a fresh year is always a good thing. And also when you really think about things that have happened in the years past, especially if it's been, you know, a few months or a few weeks, sometimes you can really see God along the way and you can see what He's done with those bad things versus just kind of sitting in them and thinking, oh, 2018 sucked and I'm gonna let it go. So one of the things that I saw, I think it was on Facebook, said, just remember that a bad day doesn't mean you have a bad life. And that's so true. I think sometimes we just deny and don't want to deal with thinking about the bad things that have happened, and that kind of becomes a part of us whether we want that to be or not, because not processing those things and not acknowledging those things, they still stay with you whether you think they do or not. So we had a lot of really good things in 2018, a few things that I would have preferred didn't happen in 2018, but they did. And so I just wanted to share kind of my top 10 defining moments of 2018 with you. They made an impact on my life, whether positive or negative, in 2018, and things that hopefully one day I'll come back and see this video and remember, wow, that's where I was in the year 2018. I wanted to open this up as a discussion with you guys because I think sometimes when we hear about what other people are going through, the highs and the lows, the mountains and the valleys, it kind of helps us process things too. So I would love it if you guys would share even just 5 of your 2018 defining moments in the comments below, because I think that that would be really helpful and good to see for other people, and also to celebrate your little victories, because we as moms don't do that a lot as well. So a couple of things before I start. I'm obviously in a different place. I never really film in my bedroom, but let's be real, my house is still not clean from Christmas, and so this is like the only clean space in my house. And also I wrote down my top 10 things a few days ago on my phone, and so in an effort to just not have to edit and edit and edit for the rest of the day, I'm just gonna be reading things off my phone. So casual, I should have made some coffee so I could just have a little coffee talk with you and call it that, but I'm gonna be reading off my phone. So, yeah, I think before I get started, I should say that 2018 definitely ended in a much different place than it started. I'm sure so many of you have the same thought going into 2019. It was nothing like I expected, although I've learned to not have many expectations. But that being said, other than going from just being married to having a first child, I don't think I've had any more change than I've had in this specific year. This was a big year. We had a lot of changes happen this year. I had probably some of my personal biggest struggles. I think I shared recently that I had some emotional highs and lows. I was trying to figure out if it was hormonal, if it was postpartum stuff, some anxiety type of things that I think go hand in hand just with some of the big things I was processing this year and the big changes. I like to be on a schedule, and this year was anything but that. Which led to some of the worst parenting moments, I think, that I would just rather not acknowledge and move on from. I snapped at my kids a few times more than I would have ever wanted to, and I had a lot less creative, I had a lot less, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, a lot less excitement about being creative, but I am so excited for the start of a new semester in our homeschool. I'm starting to feel that passion for homeschooling and just creativity coming back, and I think that has to do with my health kind of catching up and taking that as a priority in my life. So we definitely had a lot of mountains and a lot of valleys. So I'm going to start with number 10. I'm going to go through to number 1. It is in order of most and least impactful, but nonetheless impactful in my year. So number 10 would be that I started working for Usborne. And I know that sounds weird, like that's a part of my top 10 of the year, but that really gave me some energy and some freedom that I think I needed. I needed the challenge, and the challenge has been so good for me. I was like, what is in the background? The challenge has been so good for me. It's definitely was a missing link for me. One of the reasons that I started YouTube is just because I love sharing. I love the challenge of kind of having a job, so to speak. And Usborne really has given me that. Every month there's a new goal you can hit. I've gotten to meet a lot of great people who are really encouraging and kind of coaching people along. I don't know that I'm doing that so well yet, but just having that creative freedom and having the challenge has been so good for me, and it brought kind of a breath of fresh air to, you know, I've been doing this parenting thing for 10 years now, and sometimes you just need a little something to motivate you, and that's been very motivating. And beyond that, the books have been amazing. They've brought a new life to our homeschool when I was kind of feeling not super creative and motivated in our homeschool. So that's been really great as well. Number 2, also homeschool related, but we went year-round, and going year-round was never something I was ever interested in because like I said, I like that set schedule and I like the traditional school year schedule, but I was starting to see that, again, because my motivation was lacking, and I was feeling guilt about taking the beach days with my kids and taking the trips with my kids where I didn't really want to feel that guilt. Going year-round has been so good for my relationship with the kids. It's given us a freedom that I wasn't giving. We have that freedom as homeschoolers, but I wasn't giving myself permission to have that freedom, if that makes any sense. And so doing this year-round thing has been so refreshing, and I don't feel like the household duties that I am in charge of are a burden anymore because I can work them in a much more organic way because we're not so rushed in getting our schoolwork done. It's been amazing. Year-round was the best thing I think we've done for our homeschool so far. So number 8 is actually has to do with my brother. So my brother, there was basically a big falling out at our church, the church I grew up in, basically. and he worked there. And so they decided this year to homeschool their kids. Their kids went to school there. And it has been amazing because I only have, my brother is the only one who has kids besides me in our family right now. And so those are my kids' cousins. They're all like little stair steps. They're real close in age. And so having their cousins be homeschooled now has brought another new like life into our family. Our family gets together so much more now, which is so funny because our town's pretty small. We all live within, 10 minutes of each other, but our schedules weren't together, and it's been so great. My brother is 9 years older than me, so we have probably never been as close as we are right now, and the things that's done in our family has been really cool. I'm so proud of him because he really took the bull by the horns, and they really made this huge change, and he seems to be thriving in it, and that's been great for me to see as well. It's encouraged me in our homeschool to kind of see it from a fresh perspective again. They're excited about certain things, and they love, these certain things about homeschool that I kind of forget and take for granted. So it's been just so great all around to watch this story unfold in my brother and his wife's family, and to have that new life brought into our family because our kids are getting together more often. So that's definitely something that I'm always going to remember about 2018, is just that extra boost of family time. So speaking of my younger brother, so long story short, I know I've said this before, but for those of you who are new, I was adopted by my grandparents. But they've always been mom and dad to me. I've been with them since I was little baby. I've never known anyone else to be my mom and dad besides them. And so technically my older brother would be my uncle on paper if we went by that. But he's my brother because I grew up with him. And so our cousins are cousins, long story short. But my younger brother and sister, we have the same biological mother. But she's not in the picture for any of us. So even though she's not been in our lives, we've still considered ourselves brothers and sisters, and I've gotten to spend a lot of time. Our family was really good about their dad, and my parents were really good about cultivating that relationship for us. So we spent a lot of time together, especially as we got older, because they lived with us for a while as well. So long story short, that's my older brother, but now I'm talking about my younger brother. Hope you're still here and that didn't confuse you. So my younger brother, he's quite a bit younger than me. I'm trying to think. So he's like 21. So I didn't really get to have that much of a relationship with him beyond when he was really little, because then John and I got married. He was still quite young. And then we no longer spent our holidays and things together because I was married. So that was it always felt like a big loss for me to not have had time with him, especially since Jesse, my older son, is just exactly like him. And so I have always kind of held on to the grief of not getting to watch my younger brother grow up. But this year was so cool. So this year he moved here to Florida and lived with our family, my brother's family, while he was kind of figuring out what he wanted to do. He wanted to change up. He wanted to figure out what he wanted to go to school for, did he want to just go into the workforce? Did he want to be a police officer like his dad? He just needed like a minute to figure out what he wanted to do. I was hoping it would be a longer minute. It was a short minute, but it was so good. It was a few months that we got to have with him every day. He came on vacation with us. He was here for dinner almost every night, and that will always be with me because that brought such a life to some of my old memories that I've just held on to and not wanted to look at because I missed him so badly. And so I'm so thankful that the Lord gave that to me, and gave me that chance to have just that good, I got to be his older sister, which he's always considered me to be his older sister, and I've always been very protective of him, but it's hard to do that from a distance. So it was just so good. And now he's doing really well. He got into a really great school and he is doing really great things, but selfishly I still wish that he was here. So what number am I on? 6? So this was kind of a blessing in disguise. This next one is kind of sad, happy. So I really struggled with my health, especially this year. I got sick every single month. I was getting sick. And eventually that just was so wearing on me that I felt really down, and that's where I was starting to get kind of blue, because when your health is not there, you really just don't realize how that affects you emotionally, and that really affected me emotionally. And so, but the one thing that I learned from that experience was kind of how to make my health a priority, and where I was saying yes and things that were draining me that I didn't even realize, and just taking that in and kind of getting control of that. And I don't think that if I hadn't been sick so consistently that I ever would have made those choices for myself, but in turn they've greatly affected my family by me kind of seeing like where I was putting all my energy. So it was a blessing in disguise, although I will say in the summer I ended up with mono, and I have had that more than once. And so one of the things that we're kind of exploring is just this whole chronic fatigue thing that comes with having mono. Over the summer though, it was to the point where I was in the hospital. My spleen and liver were swollen so bad that like I couldn't take a deep breath because I could feel it. And that was kind of like the peak of my, or like the valley of the worst health that I had been in this year. And that was so hard because it was the beginning of the school year, and I had all this excitement for the beginning of the school year, but I couldn't get off the couch. I was so tired. I was so sick. We had just had an amazing summer, and I still wanted to be outside, and I just remember like looking at my kids and wanting to be able to do more, but I couldn't do more. So that was hard. That was so hard. Anybody who has ever and this is like something so mild, you know, it's not even like this chronic thing, but it was just about a month that I just would look at my kids and I wished I could do more, but I just couldn't do more. And I wasn't sure that, you know, they were going through so many different things. It could be this, it could be that I didn't really bring many of my friends or anybody really besides my family. I kind of just alluded to it a little bit on Instagram that I was having headaches and things, but I just wanted to stay so private about it because I was so confused about what was going on. My health had never been so poor. And so that was kind of a lonely time. It was a pretty lonely time. But like I said, blessing in disguise, because I'm in much better health now. The second half of the year, I was sick only one time versus 6 times in the first half of the year. And I really learned, like, I did all this blood work and found out, like, dude, I was so lacking in certain vitamins and sleep and kind of caring more. Of course, like, I need to feed my kids, but I put things on their plates and then not think to put it on mine, and all sorts of stuff that I just really needed to kind of shed some stress and gain some nutrition, and I feel so much better now. So blessing in disguise, because that caused me to reevaluate my priorities. Another thing that was really hard but really good, and now we're getting into what my top 4 things here. If you have seen the movie The Heart of Man, then this might be confusing as to why that was so impactful for me. The movie specifically was built more around, I don't know if anybody's kids are in the room, so I'm just gonna say adult themes, as far as temptation, struggles, things like that, which isn't something that has affected my life per se, very personally. So I kind of joined the Heart of Man class at our church, just thinking that, well, I mean, how bad could this be, because it doesn't affect my life. But the reason that the movie was built around those themes is because that is something that they say is so basically just like so taboo. Nobody wants to talk about those things. They kind of got to the heart of what a lot of people are struggling with in their marriages and in their personal lives, and they just kind of went for that. But so many others of us kind of struggle with things that we don't consider to be so huge, but we're still not dealing with these things. And it really all comes down to how we view God, and because how we think God views us. And my dad is amazing. I think that, and honestly, like, and John's the same way with our kids, which is such a humongous blessing, that I've always said, like, well, I will not struggle with how I think God views me, because my earthly father is such a great representation of unconditional love and compassion. But what I learned going through this Heart of Man study, was this 8-week intensive study, was that I really had not reconciled the fact that I never knew my biological father, even though I was adopted as a baby, and I never have had the desire to even meet him or know him. I had not reconciled that, and I viewed God somewhat through the lens of abandonment, even though the crazy thing is, like, if I could pick any dad in the world, I would pick my dad, who adopted me, which is so weird to say because he's always been my dad, but you know what I mean. And so the moment in the study when I realized that that was still a part of me that I was carrying every day was like, oh, and that feeling, that processing, I'm still processing that. I'm still trying to see what that means, and how that's kind of affected my life. But it was so amazing because I got to see where, like, the Lord has been dying to reach, I got to see where the Lord has been, like, desperately showing me where I'm not letting him be my completeness just because I was still keeping this one door shut. And that was like, it was such a bittersweet moment. It was so hard to recognize, but so good to see, like, there's this whole other part of me that I could let the Lord breathe life into, and I can move forward from. And it really is like, I've always known the Lord and loved the Lord, but to see just this another layer of his unconditional love and his grace and his mercy and his just his love. It really had so much to do with accepting that I am a daughter of Christ and that he chose me and he created me in his image. That was just such a necessary thing for me to let go of in order to see and accept. And can I write anything else about that? Yeah, I'm still definitely rocked by that experience. It's still baby steps. I was going through counseling with my pastor for a bit. I just recently took a little break from that. I had been going for almost a year. And just, it's a slow going, and I'm starting to think that it's not like this journey I'm gonna come to the end of. I think it just was a recognition of this new reality of this is what it is to be yoked to Christ, and his yoke is easy, his burden really is light, and it's a step by step with him. And so that really rocked my world and was very unexpected. From there, okay, yeah, so my next thing is right around that same time, excuse me, I'm not crying. Right around that same time, I went and visited home. And I hadn't been back home since I was pregnant with Jesse, so about 7 years ago. And it was just Isabella and John and I and my mom. My dad didn't come with me. He was working, and around that time, I don't even think everybody, all of my cousins and aunts and everything were home. So it just was my first time back in a while. It was a nice visit. It was great. It was fun. It was great for John to see my hometown. Going back now with this understanding through this Bible study of kind of like a lot of, through the Bible study, we processed a lot of our childhood. And I was kind of nervous to go back to see, like, was this what I remembered it to be? And it was so good. My childhood was great. I love the town I grew up in. It's this teeny tiny town north of Chicago. It's literally like a storybook, and I didn't want to see it as an adult. Does that make sense? I didn't want to find out that it was different. And it wasn't. It was still just as good. Getting to have all my aunts and uncles, and then John as well, playing music together in my grandma's basement and singing songs and worship music and James Taylor and all sorts of stuff. Getting to be with my dad again in my hometown. Literally playing tag with my dad in the backyard by my grandma's creek, a house that my mom and my grandma and I all lived in as kids. So amazing, so good. Getting to have the boys and Bella, but Bella had been there. Getting to have the boys and Annabeth there. We got to take, the boys are super into baseball, so we got to go, for them, it was totally for me. They got to go out onto Wrigley Field. We got to go in the locker rooms. I hadn't been there since the Cubs won, so that was amazing. It was just such a good experience. So that visit home was so precious and kind of bittersweet again, but I'll get to that in point number 2. So then number 3, John and I took an anniversary trip this year and actually left the country. So we went to the Bahamas. We usually take an anniversary weekend and we like stay somewhat within a couple hours of home just because we don't want to leave the kids too long. But this year was our 10th anniversary and we were like, you know what? Let's just do it. Let's pull the trigger on this. Let's go. We went to the Bahamas for, we went for 4 nights. It was amazing. And I don't think we'll ever do anything else again besides get away, because I thought our marriage was great. Our marriage was great. Our marriage was okay. Everything was good. But oh my gosh, running away with my husband was the best thing we could have done. We just kept looking at each other like, oh my gosh, you have grown up. Like, this is who I felt like we hadn't looked at each other in a good 10 years. Does that make sense? Like, once you start having kids and you just get into these routines, it was so good. And I'm still on the high of that trip. That was 6 months ago. We just started planning our next trip this summer, and oh my goodness, it was like, how have we not done this? And it was just so good. It was so good. That was a big turning point, I think, for our relationship. It's just like, we don't have, well, we had one 1.5-year-old, but we don't have newborns. We can do this. This is like, it was so good. Okay. So number 2 is hard to talk about, and this is something that I've shared on Instagram a lot and a little bit here on YouTube, but that is that my cousin, my younger cousin, he's 25 years old, was assaulted back in my hometown, and he's still on life support, but thank the Lord that he's here because he had a 5% chance of survival. And they said if he survives, he'd be in a vegetative state, and it's been such slow. That happening, especially right at the holiday season, really helps you get priorities and focus, especially in light of eternity. Like, what matters to you? What are we doing? Why are we doing the things we're doing every day? What is important? And I've experienced loss, but I've never experienced senselessness like this. He was literally on his phone, punched in the head, and now he's a 25-year-old on life support. It's just horrible. And thankfully he's still with us, but if he wasn't, then, you know, to have a family member who possibly could have been murdered, it's just the worst grief because there's no reason for it. And so that was hard. It's hard. It was hard. I'll tell you one thing. I'm gonna cry now. I've talked about my dad a lot, and how he's like the best. My parents' faith has like forever marked me. But then there was one specific night where I'm probably gonna edit that out, okay? There was one specific night where we really thought he wasn't gonna make it, and you know, you always look to your parents even as an adult as far as like how to feel about certain things. And my dad was here helping John lay flooring, and he was praying. John said, let's just pray, because we started to get this text that said everybody gather at the hospital. Everyone's thinking this is gonna be it. And I'm really sorry. Apparently this still affects me more than I realized, but so John's like, let's pray. So my dad and John and I were standing in a circle in my living room praying, and of course John and I are just praying for healing, praying for a miracle, and my dad is so faithful, and he was just praying that even if not, you are still good. And he was just praying that over and over, and I think as a daughter that was such a gift, because I could see somebody, and I can't imagine, like my nephew, my precious nephews, I love them so much, and to be facing this, you know, the moment where you think you're gonna lose somebody that you've known since before they were born, and still be praising his name, that was
that will be with me forever. And I think we don't realize, you know, how our faith affects our kids. And I don't think my dad would have ever realized, you know, that moment would have such an impact on me, but that was so impactful. And I'm so grateful for that moment to be able to pray with him. Hold up, let me just recover here. Can I? Whew. Okay. All right. I'm really gonna try to not edit this too much, so that has definitely stuck with me, that experience with my dad. But also I'm so grateful that my cousin's still here. I'm praying that a year from now I'll be watching this video and I'll be like, wow, he's doing so well. I can't believe he was in that place still in December. But you know, I don't know. We don't know what that's going to be, what that's going to look like. It's not vegetative, so that's good. But still praying for a miracle. So pray for Eric Myers. Yeah, that has been a part of our 2018, whether we wanted it to or not. And then the last thing, of course, is just that John left his old job, came home this year. It was hard, I'm not gonna lie, it's been hard. Marriage is much easier when you guys are not together all the time. I mean, honestly, it was like he didn't even live in town. But now it's so good. I cannot believe it hasn't even been a whole year yet since he left his job. Everything's going really well. And sorry, I'm getting a text, I have to go. That was my 2018. I would love to know some of the things that you guys really experienced in 2018, the good and the bad, how you guys are doing, what you're doing for 2019, if you do resolutions, etc. And I will see you next Friday with my homeschool check-in. Until, oh, by the way, I'm putting things on my Insta stories that I kind of need your help with, as far as when I come back at the end of next week, what I'm going to be doing. So pop over to my Instagram and help me out there. I will see you guys soon. Goodbye. Happy New Year.